Hi everyone, thank you for coming to join us on our T-level engineering and manufacturing webinar. Just a brief introduction towards ourselves and what we're going to go through today. So I'm Samantha Ashman and I'm the technical advisor here at City and Girls for Engineering, and I'm joined by various City and Girls and EAL colleagues who will be supporting me with today's delivery. We are presenting this webinar from home, so please excuse any unwanted background noise. The presentation is likely to last around about 45 minutes with time for questions and answers afterwards. All attendees will be in listen-only mode for the presentation, so please engage with the webinar and use the question and chat tabs from the on-screen panel. We'll be including useful information and links in the chat during the session, and then following today's webinar, we follow up with a CPD certification and a video recording of today's webinar. So just turn over to the next slide and let's look at the agenda. So within the agenda, just a brief introduction and welcome regarding the team on the call today, a background to the engineering and manufacturing T-level, how it's been developing so far, and then waiting for the question and answer session as well. So on my slide here, you can see the team for engineering and manufacturing during the development of the T-level. So we've got Scott Wilkinson, who's our industrial manager for engineering and manufacturing. We've got Robert Stott, and he's on the call today, our industrial manager for the T-levels. We've got Michael Scarrett from EAL as our product specialist, and he's on the call today as well. We've got Simon York, our lead technical advisor for apprenticeship, endpoint assessment and qualifications here at City and Girls, and he's on the call today. And there again, myself, Samantha Ashman, who's a technical advisor for engineering, who's looking after the T-levels. So just give you a bit background information regarding the T-level and its development. So in 2020, we won the contract to deliver the T-level, excuse me about that, regarding the engineering and manufacturing T-level in design and development, maintenance, installation, repair, and manufacturing process control. And this is a 5-year contract. Those who want to deliver the engineering and manufacturing T-level, we need to make sure that you're approved on the DFE websites in the first instance, and each T-level is based on the content developed by an employer panel. And part of this T-level development, we work with providers and employers to get the feedback and validation throughout its development. So making sure that this T-level is fit for purpose. So on this slide here, you can see how the T-level program composites and how it puts together. So the one in the black box is what us and City and Girls and EAL are working on. So we have been working on the core component, and as well as the occupational specialists, as well as the assessment and the synoptical practical assessment. So part of the T-level is that you'll have a core, an occupational specialism, an employer set project, and then in addition, they will do the work placement, maths and English and digital skills if they don't achieve the correct GCSE grade, and any other enrichment program as well. So as I said previously, the TQ is based on a content developed by an employee panel. The core content and the occupational specialist is being developed by a T-level panel, and some areas is some part related to apprenticeship standards, and it forms at the bulk of what we can deliver. Bear in mind, within the core content and the occupational specialism, we cannot add new content. And if we need to add new content, then we need approval from the DFE and IFA and Ofqual. So us at City and Girls and EAL, as I said previously, we've been looking at the black box area. So looking at the core, so the core is going to be assessed in a grade of A star to E. And then the occupational specialist is going to be assessed in a grade to start to pass merit distinction. And then when we combine these two grades together, then they come out with an overall grade, which is either be a pass, merit or distinction. And we can look at that a bit further along the slides. So in order to get involved within the development of the T-level, we've been engaging with employers and providers throughout this development time. And mainly within our contacts, it's how we've been identifying with EAL and as well as City and Girls. We've been also promoting our T-level through various webinars and engaging with employers through provider networks. It's using social media such as Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, etc., and also on our platforms as well to identify how important this T-level is being developed. And also, while we have this as engagement as well, we've been working with consultants on developing the material as well. As part of the development of this T level, we're also having an employee engagement board, and that's our industrial boards who will part of the development and looking at the actual occupational specialisms, core content, and the employee set project. And with the provider engagement board, we've also got the provider board that also looks at all those areas as well, but also gives an awareness of how it can be delivered in centre. So to make it a fit for purpose, we need to make sure that we engage in all these areas on this screen here. And as our main concern as well is to making sure that we meet the correct milestone deadlines as well. So in counterpart of our engagement with employers and providers, we've also been engaging with HEIs as well. We have a dedicated person here at City and Girls called Alison Whittle, and she's our post-16 to 19 post-16 technical advisor, and she's been working with a variety of different universities. On our HEI board, we're working with 6 universities, and they are looking at the content regarding the maths and English. Within that content, what we can see is that we can making sure that it's an ideal progression from to complete a degree program or a university program, and also it's got the right content for engineering as well. We also then been working with other universities as well, such as admissions, administration managers, teams, etc. And also part of this networking event is also to making sure that we are promoting the development of the T level and how it's going to progress further. So during that development of T level, we will then issue the actual specifications from IFATES, and these are what it consists of. So what we do have, we have something called the engineering core component, something called the pathway core component, and then the pathways is being split into 3 different areas with pathways underneath, with occupational specialists underneath those. So we've got a maintenance, installation and repair pathway, a manufacturing process control pathway, and a design and development pathway. And these are what the learners need to complete in order to complete this T level. So if you look at these pathways and the occupational specialist, what fits inside them. So for example, in maintenance, installation, repair pathway, we have 6 occupational specialisms that was identified at the beginning. And these are mechanical, mechatronics, electrical and electronics, control instrumentation, vehicles, and energy and utilities. And they are individual pathways that the learners can actually register on and complete within their T level itself. If we look at the other occupational route, so design and development pathway, what we have in there, we have mechanical engineering, electrical electronic engineering, control and instrumentation engineering, and structural engineering. And again, the learners can choose which pathway they want to study during their development of the T level programme. So if you look at the manufacturing process control pathway, so in this pathway, we've got production technology, manufacturing technologies, processing technologies, and material technologies. And again, learners can choose which pathway they would like to specify during their programme as well. So when we receive those documentations and looking at it, the next slide will then show what this documentation looks directly. And you can download this information from the IFATE website. So our main aim of the documentation is to making sure that we review the documentation in detail to making sure that we meet the requirement of what the engineering and manufacturing T level is about. So as you can see, we've got something called core knowledge and something called an occupational specialism. And these key topics has been identified and designed by providers and employers on the T level panel. What we then need to do, we then need to put this into a content that providers like yourselves can actually take away and digest and start delivering in centres. During that development stages, as we've been working through it, we found out that each sections of the guided learning hours was a bit too much for centres to deliver. So as an overall, we can see on this slide here, when our consultants were reviewing the core and occupational content, we worked it out that the core content was between 900 and 1,100 guided learning hours. The pathway core was between 150 and 250 guided learning hours. And then the occupational specialism was between 540 and 1,725 guided learning hours. So a lot of delivery needed in order to making sure for this delivery of this T level. So in context, if we into context, a 3 A levels is equivalent to 1,080 hours. And then with the examination on top, makes it 360 hours of content. So as we've been reviewing the content in detail, we have found out that there's too much for you as providers to actually deliver this T level. So what we do is that we reach out to employers and providers on our panels to review this content. And how we did this is shown on the next slide. So during the development of our T level, we've been consultating with a variety of different providers, employers, and different groups as well. And the reason why we do this is to making sure that we need to make sure that this qualification is fit for purpose. So from October to February and continuing as well now, we've been engaging with 22 plus consultation and validation sessions events on the TQ development. And this is where we give sample assessment material, sample content material, and sample amplification of the outlines. And we ask the providers and the employers on these boards to actually give us information and to find out if this is more applicable, and also to find out if we're in the right direction of delivery, or is it too much delivery, or is it in the right context that we've been working with. When we've been working with these providers and these employers, we then propose to IFATE and the Ofqual is that we change the actual content of how this TQ was developed. So our proposal was, and this was for milestone 1, is that we remove the content called the pathway core. And the reason why we want to move that 150 to 250 guided learning hours is that we see that it's duplicated in the engineering core component as well as the occupational specialist areas. So our new proposed T level for engineering will consist of an engineering core component and then 3 occupational pathways as well. We also then started reviewing the actual content inside the maintenance, installation, repair area. And our proposal to IFATE was that we keep the existing 5 and we then remove energy and utilities, as we feel that energy and utilities can be actually assessed through mechanical, mechatronics, electronics, and control and instrumentation. So that's where we was with our proposal on milestone 1. Within our proposal as well, we then decided to look at the guided learning hours and actually trying to reduce the core and occupational content as well. So by merging the pathway core into the occupational specialism and the core content, we have now reduced the actual guided learning hours. So currently our core content is at 720 guided learning hours. Then our occupational specialists can go between 360 and 1,736. Again, we know it's still too much for the content and delivery. And this is why we have providers and employers feeding to us regarding the delivery, the aspect and the information that we've provided in our qualifications. We also understand as well is that if we're going to deliver this program over a 2-year program, we need to make sure that the learner has enough time in centre to deliver this program. So again, these are not actual the guided learning hours that we are working on. These are the ones that we've come up to with our review by merging that pathway core into the core and the occupational specialism. By doing that, we can see that this program is now fit for purpose, and hopefully with our approval from the institute and the other awarding organisations, then we can work towards a good T level. So part of our development and part of our responses is that we get feedback from providers and employers to making sure that we are developing it to the fixed purpose. So for example, the one at the top, we've got feedback regarding the guided learning hours, 720. They would like it to roughly to be between 500 and 600, so it can be delivered by yourself, the providers, in the actual time. They also want to reduce in the rationales of production specification regarding the MPC pathway, because we feel that some of the content is actually merged across the other pathways as well. So in other words, we reduce those guided learning hours of 1,726 down to roughly between 500 and 600. And that's what we come back with our feedback. We take our feedback really well because this is how we will develop this T level and making sure that it is fit for purpose for centres to deliver. And then we do have some feedback regarding the content itself, because again, our consultants only work with what's been given to them on the paperwork, but again, we have the provider and we also have the employee feedback as well regarding the consultation, is that we want to make sure that it's in current context and it's also referring to new terminology, new technology. So that's just an example where we've got different information regarding the software that we should be using as well. So again, all this feedback is then collated together and we share this with IFA during our development sessions. So on our first milestone, what we did, we then worked towards our specification context side. And within the specification, we need to put it into something that providers can take away and deliver. So on our next slide, you can see what our specification looks like. And this is an example that's taken from the maintenance, installation, repair specification. So what you can see on the screen is that the T-level qualification and our first milestone submission was that the engineering common core was at 720 guided learning hours, and then our standalone occupational specialisms was between 340 to 570, and they were then set up into our core component numbers, what we use at City and Guilds. So mandatory unit was unit 300, and the standalone qualifications were then underneath it as well. You can also see on the screen as well is that we've also got examples of how we're going to be assessing these units as well. So the core component, as what we identified here at City and Guilds EAL, is that the examination paper is going to be externally set and it's going to be split into two papers. And I can talk about that in the next few slides. But just to give you an overview, the exam paper is going to be, as we say, there's a 2 hours duration with a weighting of 35%, and it's going to be externally marked. And these examinations are going to be sitting to the A-level series time, so the May-June time. Same for examination paper number 2. Again, this is going to be externally set, and our recommendation was 2 hours. And again, this is still being discussion, and again, of a weighting of 35%. And again, this is going to be externally marked. The employee set project, and that's the employee set project regarding the pathways, so maintenance, installation, repair, manufacturing process control, and design and development. We're saying for maintenance, installation, repair pathway that the externally set project should be 21 hours duration. And again, that's a weighting of 30%, and that will be also externally marked. And when we combine those grades together, we're looking at a grade of A star to E. Within the occupational specialist component, this is going to be one assessment, so it's a practical assessment, where we're working on towards our milestone 4 is the duration, how much it's going to be mark time, and the weighting as well. And that's also going to be marked by yourselves as providers and externally moderated by us at City and Guilds EAL. And again, that's going to be in a grading of pass, merit, and distinctions. So that's just a quick example of what this specification would look like on the front screen. So providers, you need to know what the context is and what you need to deliver. So taking from the documentations that we receive from IFATE, we can see the one in the pink screen of what do learners need to learn is what you as centres will be teaching your learners, and as well as the ranging and the principles of what's going to be delivered and what you need to cover within that content. And this is how it's going to be assessed through the examination as well. So as you can see on screen as well, on the right hand side, you've got the core knowledge and understanding across engineering and manufacturing route. That is what we got taken from the original documentations that was given to us in October. And then the one that says working with engineering and manufacturing centres is what our consultants has been working on and what us at City and Guilds and EAL has been developing into something and more specification that you as centres can work on. And again, this is still under review as well. So as you can see from the information that we got from beginning, we've expanded into more detail, and we can now identify what learners need to learn within the qualification. So part of that core component is that we're going to be assessed by examinations. So, and this is where we are now regarding our consultation period. So we've been looking at regarding the core examination and its content, and to making sure that this T level is suitable for progression onto either degree programs, apprenticeships, or into university, we need to make sure is how we're going to assess this. And how we're going to assess this is by 2 examinations. And like I said at the beginning, These proposals were shared with the T-level panel in October and December, that we were suggesting that we're going to do 2 examinations and as well as an employee set project. So what's going to be covered in examination 1 and what's going to be covered in examination 2? Well, on the next slide, we're going to show you what's going to be covered in these examinations. So in examination paper number 1, we're going to cover the maths and science in the principal engineering context. And so, for example, mathematics for engineering and manufacturing, science for engineering and manufacturing, materials and their properties, mechanical principles, and electrical and electronic principles. And the reason why we put those together is that we want our HEIs to have our feedback into that examination paper as well. And we also want to identify that it's a set alone examination where we can show that they've changed and attained the correct mathematical and science skills. So within the second part of the paper, again, we're going to use the rest of the other elements, and the core is actually a total of 17 elements to be assessed. So within the second paper, we're going to call that the engineering and its context, and within those, we're going to assess the learners regarding quality management, health and safety, business, stock asset management, project program, etc. So as you can see, how we split the examination paper for 720 guided learning hours, we can see that paper 1 will consist of 360 guided learning hours, and paper 2 is also 360 guided learning hours as well. So you can see that it's got the good content and the paper has been split appropriately. And we feel that's how this programme should be going forward regarding the examinations. So on the next screen, what you can see is an example of what the examination paper would look like. So on this screen here, what you can see is that the examination paper as a sample question. And this is what we have submitted for feedback. And this is what our providers and consultants will work on as well. So the example core examination material you can see on the screen. So on the first part, a crane holding a crate of a mass 200 kilograms, a height of 9 meters above the floor. That is taken from our maths and science paper. And as you can see, it's got different parts of question on there. We've got the mark scheme, and then we can see where it's been identified and where it's part in the qualification specification it is as well. Again, with paper 2, this is our engineering and context. And what we've got on there is that we have a question paper regarding the main requirements of the Regulatory Reform and Fire Services Order 2005, and it's a 1-mark question. And again, from there, you can see that it's been taken from the qualification spec reference and how it's been equally marked. Again, on both papers, we are going to be assessing the learners on their English skills as well. So there is going to be allocation regarding English and how they can write the correspondence as well. They are not going to be single questions or multiple choice questions. They're going to be worded questions as well. So we need to make sure that it's fit for purpose. And this is what we've been working on so far and having the consultations with providers and employers. So as the development goes further within this qualification, we then need to look at the employee set project and its content. And we've been looking at the consultation period as well. So within the consultation period, we have been making sure that number 1 is fit for purpose, number 2 is industrial related, and number 3 that it can be delivered in centres, because we need to make sure that the provider has the access to the equipment and the resource available to deliver this employee set project. And this is what we've been working on at this moment in time. So on the screen you can see now is an example of the employee set project, and this is taken from the design and development pathway. So within the design and development pathway, what we do have is a project where the learner needs to design a new boiler system that monitors the number of people using the station. And what we can see with the employee set project is that we do give them a specification performance on what the learners need to do. We also give them a photographic image of where it's going to be identified and where it's going to be done. We also then apply the actual equations, if there's any calculations that they need to do. And then we set this employee set projects per task. And each task is given a variety of different marks. And again, this is mapped towards the maths, English and digital skills as well. So I'm incorporating all these areas into one project. And for different pathways, there is different allocation requirements of time that needs to be completed as well. What we do also understand as well is that we need to making sure that it's engineering realistic as well. So we give them the design specification or the scenario at the beginning to making sure that it fits into an engineering context. And again, these employee set projects will change throughout the series of the actual T-level and its development. So again, this is what we've been working on as well. And this is where we've been submitting the information for our milestone 1 as well. So while we've been working on these employee set projects, the actual core content, the information as well, we've actually been making sure that we're meeting all the requirements that is set in the milestones. And our next milestone is milestone 4. So for now, regarding the development of the engineering manufacturing T-level, we have made 3 different milestones. And I'm now working towards milestone 4. So as you can see on the slide, you can see that our keystone milestone for development for our TQ. So our next milestone is coming up is the 29th of March, and this is where we have providers and employers join our boards to review the content. And this is why it's important we have this information. So on the 29th of March, our milestone 4, we've got to submit the revised TQ specification, the revised assessment material, revised assessment strategy, implementation plans and resource plans. And then from that feedback, and that feedback comes directly from IFATE and the T-level panel. We then work on towards our next milestone, which will be milestone 5. And our milestone 5 is our assessment material. So again, every feedback that we put forward, we also involve the employees and the providers as well. Milestone 6 again is our assessment material as well. And hopefully by the 19th of July, milestone 7, we will have a final approval of what the engineering and manufacturing T-level qualification is going to look like. And that gives our specification, our assessment material, our assessment strategy, our implementation plan, our resources, and examples of materials that centres can be using. And again, whilst we've been showing this development and how these stages through, we're making sure that we keep our providers, our employees updated, engaged throughout development of the T-level. So for providers and employers, there's a way how you can contact us or work with us. So the first one, you can go directly to our website. So our website and EAL's website has a dedicated page regarding the T-level of engineering. And again, this webinar will be put onto the website with any FAQs that come from this. We also then building up employee focus groups, provider focus groups, e-bulletins, and any draft specifications as well. And also we've got the dedicated technical advisors. So that's myself, who'll be working on the T-level itself, and also our industrial manager, Ross Stott, who's also working with the employers regarding the development of the T-level as well. So there's for our website as well. We also can like you to get engaged as well with us as well by being part of our provider employee panel. Being part of our provider employee panel make sure that we have that corresponding feedback that we need to make sure that the engineering and manufacturing T-level is fit for purpose. And we also need to make sure that we are showing the willing and information that what is required for engineering and manufacturing in the industry, and the industry is going further to the future as well. So we have that really engagement and that supporting as well. So in order to support you providers on the development of the engineering T-level and how it's going forward, there's been a variety of different websites that's been put up by the government regarding funding, industrial placements, etc. So on your screen here, what you can see is different types of websites to support the providers. So the first one is from the government, and you can sign up to them on this website, on the government website, regarding the updated T-levels and the next step for providers as well, and how it can be selected. We also have on there as well, sorry about that, that's just switched off. So sorry about that. We also have as well is the approaches to delivery. So some centres who've come to our webinars, they've asked us regarding how it's going to be assessed, how can they deliver it, because it's a new qualification and they need to know how it's going to be delivered in centre. So we have got that on the website on there, on the government website, how to deliver assessments. We've also got information regarding industrial placements, and these are the two links on here as well. And that's showing the objectives and what's the industrial placement about and why does the learner have to have the 45 to 60 days industrial placement. And as well as the publication as well, we've also got the website down at the bottom regarding the capital funding that providers like yourselves can actually look into as well, with a deadline of the 31st of March. So anyone who wants to deliver this T-level can have a look at these different websites to find some further information regarding its next steps, as well as join our webinars as well. So this is going to the end of the webinar. Hope you've found out some additional information on how it's going to be used and how we are developing it so far. We are working towards milestone 4, which is reviewing the content such as the occupational specialism, and as well as reviewing the occupational specialist assignments. So that's what we're working towards now. So any questions, then please get in touch.
Hi Sam, it's Rob, you all right?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks Rob.
Yeah, I've got a question. I thought it'd be good to share with everyone. Will the students have to decide their pathways on enrolment, as some students really won't understand what's involved in each pathway at the beginning of the course? So I thought that'd be quite good to put out there.
Yeah, so at this minute in time, the learners will have up to the cut-off point, which is the 42 days. So for the first 6 weeks, you can do a brief introduction to what the T-level is about. Within the core content, you have got 3 units, which is the Introduction to Manufacturing Process Control, Introduction to Design and Development, Introduction to Maintenance, Installation, Repair. So they are little small units, roughly about 30 guided learning hours. And then the 30 guided learning hours, what we can do from that, you then can register the learner to the correct pathway that you want to go on to. If we have any more information regarding registration, that we'll be able to share with that. We'll be able to share that with you. Thanks, Rob. Have you got any other questions that's come through?
Simon, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can hear you, Simon.
Yeah, there's quite a few. I think most of them have been answered by other people on the call already. There's quite a few around the nature of the employee set project. I think the question's around that it's not actually set by the employers. I think Mike's answered it around the fact that it's effectively validated, so it's designed in conjunction with employers that we work with and validated. That's where the employee set element comes from. There is a question around funding. I don't know whether you'd be able to answer this now, because I know these can be quite complex issues, but there was a mention of a funding deadline on the 31st of March. Is that 2021? And what funding deadline are we referring to? What do you mean by deadline?
So it's to get them T-level funding. So each T-level for engineering or construction or manufacturing or whatever, there is a deadline that centres can apply to. It's on the government website under funding. And if you are thinking of developing or delivering a T-level, you have got a documentation that you need to fill out in detail and submit, and that needs to be done by the 31st of March.
Okay, so we're talking really capital funding there, aren't we, to provide resources, kit, basically, resources of that nature. But yeah, that makes sense.
Like capital, building, staffing, etc., to deliver this T-level.
Okay, next question. Do providers have to deliver all pathways?
So you have to deliver all the core components, but the pathway is specialist to those learners on programme. So for example, if you've got a class of 16 learners and half of them want to do mechanical, half of them want to do electrical, then you would deliver those 2 pathways.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So you could just deliver, say, vehicles of maintenance, installation, and repair as it was originally designed. You could just deliver that, couldn't you? You deliver all the core for that, and then the occupational specialism of vehicles, if that's where you wanted to specialise.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just have a look for the rest of the questions. Another question. Hi, will all external assessments be in the second year?
So currently the external assessment, so the core examinations and the employee set project will be assessed in the first year. So to make sure they progress onto the correct occupational specialism, we will making sure that they complete the 17 core components in the first year and then be assessed. And then the internal assessments for the occupational specialist will be done in the second year.
Okay, good. A follow-up question around the funding deadline. So this was funding for capital bids for resources, and it's a legitimate concern, I think, this one. So the funding deadline for capital bids is the 31st of March 2021. That's the information we've been given. But can this be achieved? There's still quite a lot being discussed. So I think just forgive me if I'm interpreting this wrong, but to actually put a capital bid in for equipment, for kit, for resources, it's obviously going to be helpful if there's a clear line of sight into what the assessment and the programme contains. So with that deadline being quite soon, the end of this month, how can centres know what to purchase? I know that's a difficult question.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, that is. So what we have been doing, we have been working like our provider board, so you can see information regarding specification. But if you're looking on one particular pathway, for example, if you get in touch with us, we'll be able to share you a draft specification content with you for that particular pathway, and then so you'll be able to identify what funding you want.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think from my perspective, I mean, I don't work as much with the T levels, obviously, as yourselves, but I've spoke to quite a few centres. Some are a little bit further down the line. Some are running transition years, which are really helping them to get their heads around what's included. And some of them are talking to us closely, and some of them are creating almost support groups, really, where they're sort of discussing with other colleges, connecting with other colleges, and deciding where they're going to run and what they would expect to see in there. So yeah, I think that's a really, really good question, that around the capital funding, because it's sometimes hard to resource and plan what you don't know you're going to achieve. But there shouldn't be huge surprises in what you see in the T level. So a vehicles pathway will include things associated with apprenticeship standards, such as light vehicle maintenance and repair, wouldn't it? You would expect to see that. Obviously, there's a move into more less internal combustion engine type maintenance and repair, and more into sort of a electrical hybrid system. So they're the things you need to plan around. You don't want to deliver something and it be out of date before you start. So start to think about those considerations. Suzanne has asked the draft specifications available, who to email. So how do you want to share that connection so we can start to sort of show those?
So after the webinar, we have got, you will get a confirmation email, and within that confirmation email, there's my email address on there, and there's also a survey, and that survey talks about if you want to be involved with it, if you want to see draft specifications, and all that information will come directly to myself, and then from there I'll be able to send out draft specifications or even arrange one-to-one meetings with centres to discuss this T level in further detail.
I think the one-to-one meetings are particularly beneficial because I think sometimes it's almost like teaching a lesson, this with the differentiation. Obviously, we're all at different points on the T level journey. You know, some people have already become very, very involved with it. Some people are just really getting engaged in the process now. So if you want some time with Sam or other members of the team to sort of go through it and make sure you're comfortable with the content, we can provide that. So when you get that email, please get in touch and let us know the nature of what you want to discuss, and we can set those further meetings up so that when you join, bigger meetings further down the line, like this, webinars and Teams meetings, you'll be able to do it from a position of catching up with where everybody else is up to.
Yeah.
A couple more. Sam, who issues the actual certificates out of interest?
So the actual qualification is owned by the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. So everything to do, we're just the awarding organisation that's developing the qualification. The institute owns the qualification.
So they issue certificate.
Yeah.
Do you have, next one, do you have any comments? Oh, this is a tricky question. I almost don't want to read this out, but I'm going to anyway, because this is an area of consternation for a lot of centres, and we know it's going to be difficult, and our responsibility is for a certain element, which is TQ development. But we'll put it out there anyway, and we'll see what you've got to say, Sam. Sorry to put the pressure on you with this one, but do you have any comments on the work placements at all at this stage?
So regarding work placements, there is, on the links that I shared on my screen, there is some links regarding how work placements should be taken apart. Work placements is not part of us, it's part of the institute themselves. But what we have been doing is been working with employers, and Rob, who's on the call as well, he's been working with employers to discuss how these work placements will be taken apart. So, for example, if you're part of any combined authority groups, or you want to be, or if you go to the MFEC meetings, for examples, then this is where the collaboration between employers and providers has been working really well, and that's how we've seen that how the work placements is going to be working as well. So we have got another webinar tomorrow regarding for employers, which if you want to register onto. And that will tell you how it's going to be developed as well regarding the T-level and how employers can get involved, and also we may touch on regarding work placements as well on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, from our previous experience of technical qualifications, which was very much a precursor with a similar strategy around, very similar to T-levels itself, around both the assessment strategy and the work experience, that either mandated work experience or certainly line of sight into an employer. We produce guidance around that employers and providers can use to make sure that they can find that common ground in the work experience process. I think duration's probably the main thing that centres are concerned about. It's 45 to 60 days, isn't it, which is a significant. There are quite a few centres exploring you might have seen it before, the model where you run apprenticeship programs in the same curriculum areas, and you do a geographical matching exercise, and when the apprenticeships in college, and they deliver, they're being delivered to, there's an opportunity potentially for the full-time learner, I'll use that term, full-time learner, to move into that employer's workplace, carrying out similar skills, get a pipeline into the next level of apprenticeships as well. Often, well, always, pretty much the health and safety for that employer has already been carried out. They're interested in employing people in the same skills and same disciplines, so it can be quite useful to take somebody on from a work experience perspective and keep somebody in the business at all times. I mean, we piloted that in centres in the past when I've been in centres, and we actually saw a increase in attendance of our apprentices where there was less time where they were getting pulled back into work at busy periods. So I think there are some opportunities for maybe investigating that. It's not a perfect solution. It is going to be quite difficult to resource 45 to 60 days. I don't think it will be taken out of the T-level, but as Sam's mentioned, it's not actually part of our development, although I'm sure we'll resource maybe some of our previous guidance around work experience to be able to support the journey. Another question from Greg. How long have we got left, by the way, Sam? Does this finish at 12?
It finished at 12, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we've got a little bit of time yet, so we'll go through a few more. So could the age of 16 be restrictive to getting a work placement? I think we have seen that in our past experience. What are your thoughts, Sam?
Yeah, I think so, and that's the reason why we want employers to get involved within this development of this T-level, because with engineering, some employers may say no, they can't be with us because they're 16. They've got to be can't start with us until they're 18, for example. So the reason why we want employers on this development of our T-level is to make sure that they do have that understanding that the 16-year-old is going to be as I will call it, fresh out of school, starting a qualification at a local college or local provider, and probably have a limited experience regarding industry experience. So actually being involved in that part and actually developing themselves and training them, giving that really vital experience is really how this development of this T-level is going to go forward. And it's to making sure that our employees that we do work with have that understanding about it as well.
Yeah, next question to do with the work experience as well. Are we going to get a drop in employees taking on apprenticeships if there are so many 45 to 60 day free work placements? I mean,
I don't think we will.
I mean, I don't think we will. The T-level learner is not necessarily going to replace an apprenticeship. I know it's you know, it's you use the word free in the question, don't you? So there is that element of it, but I don't think an employee is ever going to get an output from a T-level learner that they would get the same output from an apprentice. An apprentice is in that sector, is working full time in that sector, and the sort of work output and the rate of acquisition of those very specific skills associated with the apprenticeship will be so much faster, you know, so much quicker than the T-level person. So I can't see it being used as a justification. I mean, we remain to see, and you know, you're always surprised sometimes by things that happen. But I think if it's somebody who's specifically in that role, say machinist, using engineering technician standard, and they want a machinist, I don't think they'd be able to use somebody from a T-level and get the same level of output as you would from somebody who is on a engineering technician machinist pathway.
And I also, it's also as well with the T-level as well, the actual learners who's doing this program is threshold competency, not actual occupational competency as well. And that's the difference between an apprenticeship learner and a T-level learner.
Yeah, as you saw with the core, you know, the core is quite broad. You know, it's specific to all types of engineering, and the specialism increases as you move through the program. But if you thought about, I'll refer to engineering technician again, you know, that apprenticeship, the pathway 9 machinist, you're spending 36 to 42 months on machining, you know, so you're not necessarily going to get somebody out at the end of this who you would directly replace for somebody who's gone through the apprenticeship, because they wouldn't have the level of skill that somebody who's trained for that level of time and that specific in that chosen discipline. Suzanne has mentioned that we have some employees who will take an apprentice on for 4 days and a T-level student for 1 day. So that's the point we were getting at earlier, that almost like some people have mentioned like a flipped apprenticeship for the T-level, where they go to college for maybe 4 days and 1 day off, and then the apprentice is in work for 4 days with 1 day in college, and flip that apprenticeship. And I think if you can geographically match those, so it makes it easy, because a lot of these learners will be 16 to 18, so travel can be an issue. So do a geographical matching exercise. I think it can work. It certainly worked for centres that I worked with in the past. Not to the breadth of this, obviously, because these requirements are bigger around the 45 to 60 days, but it was certainly a program that we benefited from a lot, and we saw quite a few full-time learners go into apprenticeships in the same companies. Yeah. So the next one, the T-level placements will hopefully be, it's more of, I think, a comment this. So the T-level placements will hopefully be great progression route into an apprenticeship. So hopefully they'll coincide nicely. It's very true that, and that's from Max, it's very true that hopefully they will coincide nicely. We're obviously doing an awful lot of work in the background. I know you're doing that, Sam, aren't you? To make sure that there is a line of sight into progression, so people can see where those clear relationships are made. And it could be, you know, a reduction in duration of an apprenticeship, or it could be that they decide to go into higher education. So next one, will students on placements be paid or accept that it's work experience, not paid employment as such? Sam.
Oh, that's a quickie one. That's a tricky one, isn't it?
I think they can pay them if they wanted to, but they don't have to.
Yeah, mandate. I think that's the case, isn't it? And it's up to the employer as well during that time.
Yeah. So next one, coming in quite fast now. This is good, a lot of engagement. How do you think universities are viewing this qualification, as it is clearly geared towards apprenticeships? A third of our current engineering learners go to uni. It's a good question, Gary, that one, actually. I'm not so sure it's mean, we've talked a bit about apprenticeships. I'll let you come in a second, Sam, don't worry. I'm not so sure it's necessarily the occupational specialism in the second part of the programme is certainly got that direct connection to apprenticeships. But the core itself, I feel, is very good for university progression. It's got 2 exams, as you saw before. There's a maths and science exam in there, which is really good for universities to see that level of maths and science as separate from the rest of the program. There's a specific grade for that, which I think is really good for universities. And then the fact that it's all externally examined, and it's quite big, that core, you know, it's quite in-depth engineering. So I think the core should very much reassure universities, particularly it's split. I don't know what your thoughts are, Sam.
Yeah, I think that's why we've got the HEI board and working with those providers and universities at the minute, to making sure that the actual core content is that we're working towards is an ideal progression to university. So Alison, who works for us at City and Girls, she's been actually doing the mapping documentation and how the T-level programme will actually fit into university courses. So looking at that, looking at the outline content, what grade would they get, how many UCAS points this is going to be towards as well. So I think they just have to understand that the core component is equivalent to A levels grade, so A star to E, and then the occupational specialism is equivalent to the past merit distinction grades as well. So that's like your NVQ, TECSA, apprenticeship qualification start.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think from our previous experience, so this T level is, as I mentioned before, there were technical qualifications as precursors to these that used the same or a very, very similar assessment strategy. It was external exam for your rigor, and then sort of like an employee project style, a synoptic assignment. So it's work we're experienced in doing, and feedback from universities who went through that journey, which started around 6 years ago actually on the precursor qualifications, was that universities were comfortable with requesting things like the maths unit in addition to the further maths unit of certain qualifications. You know the ones I'm referring to. Some asked for an A level, supplemented A level, so they want an A level, but not all did. But certainly when you were coming through a more of a vocational technical route, they wanted to see specific grades in the maths and the further maths unit. So with our design of our previous qualifications, it was difficult to, I suppose, tease out that maths and scientific ability in an individual learner, and that's why the qualification design and assessment design in this approach with the 2 exams gives universities that reassurance that there's a high level, and that's why it's graded as well. You know, so if somebody's achieving a distinction in that maths science exam, I think it's a clear indication for universities that that's somebody that they might want to work with. That's not to say they'll preclude others from joining, and like the precursor qualifications, this will have UCAS points, but as an organisation we only see UCAS points as the first step. Obviously, as Sam's mentioned, we have Alison working with us who will work with admissions teams and get that familiarity with these products and make sure that there's an acceptance that they do what the universities want them to do. So I think it does create that democratising multiple pathway progression route, but getting that sort of communication out to centres, universities, people who employees who take on apprentices is very important. So next one, I've got a few minutes left. So what progress has been made with competency mapping to apprenticeship standards to inform progression pathways following a T-level? Excellent question, Chris, and a real challenging one, to be honest with you. Do you want to pick it up, Sam, and I can add in?
Yeah, it has been challenging. What we are doing now, we are working with HEIs, working through the apprenticeship standards themselves. We've got a meeting with IFATE to discuss the actual concerns regarding the mapping to apprenticeship standards as well. So at this minute in time, we are taking each part of the apprenticeship standard, looking at it, and then finding out how it would map into and how, if there's any duration taken off the apprenticeship or not. So we've been working on this very closely at the minute, and as this T level's been developing further, and as we've been adapting the feedback from our milestones, then when we do have an ideal information regarding how it's going to be mapped to the apprenticeship standards, then we'll be able to release that information.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. This next question is a good question. It's something that's certainly been taxing us at City and Guilds and EL. The core component is very general and may switch learners off who are aiming for vehicles. Yeah, and funnily enough, I had a meeting about this very issue just before this meeting, and I was sort of in agreement, I would say, with that statement at first, because I think traditional sort of internal combustion engine based light vehicle maintenance and repair, and then you look at the engineering nature of the car, and I think maybe there is, or it does appear to be, a disconnect. But then when you think about, you want this to be a modern future-proof qualification, and the nature of modern vehicles, you know, hybrid technologies, engineered systems, basically, I think the core will lend itself to that very well. So I think maybe right now at this moment in time, maybe, yes, I would say it could be difficult for some of that core to be delivered to what you might call traditional motor vehicle students. But I think as we move away from, you know, 2030 is going to come quickly, isn't it? And not selling diesel and petrol cars. I think we'll find that the T level actually really works well for those learners who move into that sort of space.
Yeah. And I think as well, you have to take it from a point of, within the vehicle pathway as well, it's those who would like to progress into other areas. So not just thinking about looking at the light vehicle, the heavy vehicle context, is also looking into, like, for example, motorsport engineering, where they do a lot of engineering in the first year and then motorsport in the second year. So it's that ideal progression for those learners who just don't want to be a light vehicle maintenance or a heavy goods vehicle maintenance. It's actually looking towards different opportunities within the vehicle industry. Yeah,
because the maintenance and repair person for vehicles in the future will be an engineer with electrical and mechanical skills, won't they? You know, that's where it's going to go, really. Last one, because we're bang on time, I'll just do this one so nobody's been left out. Are the core exams, it's quite a quick one, this. Are the core exams set in stone, or could more blended approach be used for assessment, combination of multi-choice, paper-based exam and practical scenario? They are pretty much set. You know, it's a centralised approach to assessment, which we work with the Institute and we apply. So we haven't necessarily got some wriggle room. There needs to be consistency across the T-level brand, so we're sticking with it. So I'll shut up now, Sam, if you want to close.
Yeah. So any other questions you want to, then again, on the invitation, what's going to come out after this webinar and the survey, then do please get in touch. We are recruiting providers for our provider panel board, and if you do have any employers who want to join employer board as well, we are recruiting for those as well. Any information or any further information, if you want a one-to-one session with your centres or then please do contact us, and we'll hope to see you on the next webinar, which is scheduled in for the 17th of May, and hope to see you all soon. So thank you for joining us, and we'll speak to you all soon.